Imagine for a second that the Earth suddenly stops. In an instant, everything we considered stable, the planet's rotation, the cycles of day and night, climatic patterns, tides, disappears. The world we are used to collapses. People, animals, plants, oceans, the atmosphere. Everything would be thrown into instant chaos. It seems impossible, but if it did happen, the consequences would be incredibly far-reaching. The Earth rotates at tremendous speed, about 1,670 kilometers per hour at the equator. A sudden stop instantly turns this speed into a destructive force. The atmosphere, continuing to move at its previous speed, creates winds of incredible power that tear everything in their path. Houses, cars, trees, power lines. Everything is swept away by an invisible tornado that engulfs the entire equator and gradually spreads across the planet. The first thing people feel is the wind. Huge air masses move at the speed at which the Earth previously rotated. At the equator, the speed reaches 1,670 kilometers per hour, which is comparable to the impact of several thousand tornadoes simultaneously. Cities are instantly reduced to ruins. Cars are overturned, windows are smashed, roofs are torn off houses. Trees are uprooted, and clouds of dust, sand and debris create a dense vortex visible even from space. At the same time, the oceans do not remain in place. Water rushes from the equator to the poles, forming giant tsunamis. Waves hundreds of meters high sweep away everything in their path. Beaches, coastal cities, and even large islands instantly disappear under the power of the water element. For several hours, the planet is transformed into a field of chaos, where destructive winds, the deafening roar of the ocean, and flying debris combine. Hurricanes and tornadoes form instantly. Wind speeds at the equator can reach 2,000 kilometers per hour. Within minutes, the familiar relief of the planet changes. Cities, villages, forests, rivers, everything is destroyed. The equatorial zone completely changes shape. Water flows to the poles, creating new seas and continents. Even clouds, rain, and atmospheric pressure instantly change direction, creating endless chaos. The Earth's rotation creates a centrifugal force that slightly reduces the feeling of gravity at the equator. Without rotation, gravity increases, making movement on the surface more difficult. The oceans flow toward the poles, leaving the equatorial zone almost completely dry. The Amazon, Nile, and Mississippi rivers change their courses. Old shores disappear, and new continents and seas appear where they did not exist before. At the poles, the water rises hundreds of meters, forming new bodies of water that literally rise above the ground. The oceans form unusual water mountains, and huge land areas that were previously covered with water appear at the equator. These changes have unpredictable consequences for the climate and ecosystems. Within a few hours, the temperature on the sunlit side of the Earth begins to rise rapidly, while on the dark side it falls to extreme values. The polar ice caps melt on one side and grow on the other, creating an uneven distribution of water and ice. Without the planet's rotation, the familiar cycle of day and night disappears. The sun constantly shines on one side of the Earth, creating eternal heat, while the opposite side is plunged into eternal night and cold. On the illuminated side, temperatures can reach plus 70 degrees Celsius, turning the equatorial regions into deserts with scorched vegetation. On the dark side, temperatures drop below minus 50 degrees Celsius, forming ice fields and eternal snowfalls. Days and nights no longer alternate as usual, and atmospheric conditions become unstable. Constant hurricanes and tornadoes create a never-ending danger. The polar ice caps melt on the illuminated side and grow on the dark side, changing sea levels and forming new geographical contours. Climatic anomalies manifest themselves instantly. Wind currents sweep away everything in their path, while drought and frost threaten the survival of most animals and plants. The Earth is becoming unpredictable and dangerous, with every corner of the planet subject to extreme conditions. Ecosystems react instantly to change. Wild animals face extreme weather conditions, where some species die out while others adapt to the new conditions. Fish and marine life on the sunlit side die out, while some species survive in polar waters. Forests on the sunlit side burn out, turning into deserts, while on the dark side they freeze, covering the ground with ice. Birds lose their ability to migrate, many species lose their bearings, and familiar routes disappear. Plants adapted to eternal darkness, or light survive in part, but most cannot withstand the extreme conditions. New ecosystems emerge at the poles, while equatorial zones die out. People will face a catastrophe on a planetary scale. Cities will collapse from winds, tsunamis, and climate change. People at the equator will die or seek refuge underground. Polar regions will become centers of survival. Roads and bridges will be swept away. Cars will be unable to move, and transportation will be nearly impossible. People are forced to adapt to eternal heat or eternal cold, to search for resources for survival: water, food, shelter. In these extreme conditions, new human communities are formed, where survival depends on resources and the ability to adapt to the extreme environment. The architecture we are accustomed to can no longer withstand the forces of nature. Buildings collapse, infrastructure is destroyed. People use underground shelters, tunnels, and artificial oases to survive. Social structures change, survival becomes a priority, and familiar civilization disappears. If the Earth stops, life as we know it will disappear, and the planet will completely change its face. Everything we knew, the climate, oceans, animals, cities, will cease to exist in its familiar form. The Earth will become a scene from science fiction, where nature dictates new laws. The world around us is fragile and amazing. The slightest change in physical conditions turns the familiar into something strange, frightening, and exciting at the same time. People, animals, plants, oceans, the atmosphere. Everything is subject to the laws of nature. Even one small change can change everything.